Spain, after the Napoleonic Wars, the king returned home, and the people gave him a constitution. And Ferdinand said, "Nah, I'm good." But 20 years later, a bigger crisis occurred because Ferdinand was succeeded by his daughter Isabella II, who was 3 years old. But even bigger than that was because it's a French family and they believe in no girls allowed. So Ferdinand's brother Carlos was upset by the girls, so he got the old flag out of the basement and started the Carlist War. Armed with berets, they wanted Carlos to have even more power. Meanwhile, in Portugal, they were doing about the same thing.
Meanwhile, his daughter had been ousted by his brother, slash son-in-law-to-be, who wanted to bring back absolute monarchy to Portugal. Later, Pedro shows up on the shores of Portugal with a small army of liberal allies who've all sworn not to shave until the queen is restored to power. And as soon as they land, they get besieged for over a year.
And then Pedro got tuberculosis and died. And the liberal forces basically collapsed. So the absolutist King Miguel decided to help his brother-in-law and entered the war in Spain. And the Portuguese took down Isabellan's main general and captured Madrid, securing Miguel's throne while also securing Carlos V's. Not to be confused with Charles V, who was also the first Carlos of Spain. Carlos V was an absolute monarchist that gave great powers to himself, the church, and brought back the old burgundy cross, as well as the burning heart of Jesus became a very popular symbol. But despite the absolute nature, he actually gave more autonomy to locals, including the language rights, including the Basque, who are his biggest supporters. A unique pre-Indo-European language not even related to the Spanish at all, and their popular headdress of the beret, which became basically the hat of Spain. He also got chocolate named after him. Carlos abdicated in 45 but lived another 10 years, so he can take care of his wife and hang with the other absolutists in Russia and Austria. Then came Carlos Luis, or Carlos VI, who actually married Isabella II to lock down royal legitimacy and not create more conflict, but it was definitely a loveless marriage that never resulted in any kids. Carlos Luis died from typhus, and Isabella stayed in house arrest for the rest of her life. So the throne passed to his brother, Juan III, who also happened to be the heir to France's Bourbon dynasty, because everything is connected. Napoleon III, to try and secure his throne, allied with Juan and tried invading Mexico and installing Juan as the king, which went terrible. Well, Juan was able to take Dominica. He was then succeeded by his son, Carlos VII. This is also the time of Prime Minister Juan Vázquez de Melé, but also the time of the Spanish-American War, where Spain was completely kicked out of the Caribbean and lost the Philippines. So Chuck VII was not looking too good, which led to an anti-monarchist revolt that was put down very brutally. Then came his son, Jaime III, who was famous for leading forces against the Boxer Rebellion and into the scramble for Africa. Meanwhile, in Portugal, the unpopular Miguel II resigned in 1909 and was succeeded by his son, Miguel, who had a lot of money owed to criminal syndicates, and was also still deeply unpopular, leading to the Portuguese Civil War. And just 2 years in, the Republican forces beat out the monarchists, so Miguel and his family had to flee to Spain. The Portuguese Braganza family continued through his brother Duarte, or Edward, but it was also still the mid-1910s, and the majority of the government was pro-Central Powers, but the king himself, who still had a lot of absolute authority, was big friends with Nicholas II and Franz Joseph, so he decided to stay neutral. Should also be noted, it's a different Nicholas in Russia, but still the same Franz Joseph who was friends of Karl V. Jaime was a lifelong bachelor, never had any kids, and never even got married, for reasons. So the throne passed to his uncle Alfonso Carlos, or Alfonso XII. He was a very humble, very religious, and very artsy guy that was popular with the masses, but he was also 82 when he took the crown. Unlike Jaime, he did get married, but for one reason or another, he just never had any kids. Thus ended the male-only line of Carlos V. So Alfonso selected as his heir a distant relative named Xavier, or Xavier. Xavier is both a distant relative while also being Alfonso's wife's sister's son, and a nephew of Miguel III, thus starting the branch of Bourbon-Parma. But there was another claimant from Javier's sister's son, Karl Pius, who ironically was also a Habsburg. But a lot of people argued why would he count, because he's a descendant from a female branch, and if we're going to just do that, we should have just supported Isabella in the first place. Thus started the Spanish Civil War. along with fighting socialist anarchists. Carl Pius was supported by the Crusaders and a lot of anti-government generals like Francisco Ferdinand, as well as Benito Mussolini. While Xavier, who was seen as the legitimate government, was supported by a lot of sides, but notably Mexico and the French far-right monarchist French Action. And literally everyone hated the anarchists, and Carl Pius spent most of the energy on them, leading to Xavier winning. Carl Pius and his family fled to America, and they're just kind of living normal people lives nowadays. During World War II, Germany offered Xavier to claim France, but he was disinterested in working with them. Xavier was king of Spain during its reconstruction and modernization, being kind of frenemies with the Portuguese dictator Salazar as an ally to try and keep their colonies. But with the Carnation Revolution ousting Salazar, Xavier realized it's probably time to let new people in, so he resigned the throne in 74 and passed away 3 years later to his son Carlos Hugo, or Carlos VIII. And he actually broke with tradition of the Carlists because he was actually a socialist. Aligned with Mariano, yes, and his best friend, Prime Minister Jose Maria Zavala Castilla. In modernizing the nation that's been basically stuck in the 50s while in the mid-70s, inspired ironically by Titoist communism, bringing Spain into the modern era even if a lot of their new views feel a little hypocritical. A lot of traditional Carlists hated this and supported his more conservative brother, Sixtus Enrique, often joked about online as Chud Prince because he's associated with a lot of horrible things. But the political party that supports him isn't really that big, he's not that relevant, he's 85, cannot walk by himself, lives in Argentina, and also has no kids. Meanwhile, his brother is relatively popular, married a Dutch princess, and had Carlos Xavier, or Carlos IX, the current king of Spain, who follows in his father's humble socialist ideas. He's got a handful of kids, and the future king, the Prince of Asturias, is Carlos Enrique, who will eventually be Carlos X, and it's ironic because he currently is 10 years old. He's got 2 older sisters, Lisa and Celicia. They changed the rules so they can inherit, but only after Carlos Enrique. Should also be noticed, Chuck 9 actually has a bastard son named Hugo, who technically is legitimized and can use the Bourbon Parma name, but he cannot inherit. But anyways, that brings us to today. Spain is a multicultural society, united by red berets and a strong Catholic faith. It's kind of like Japan, and it's a one-party plus state where there are other political parties, but 95% of the time it's just the one. Since the time of Carlos VIII, technically they're called the constitutional king of Spain, but they have far more power and authority than anywhere else in Europe. But the people seem to like the royals, especially the current and last Carlos. They are pretty benevolent. And that's the story of the many Carlies. But let me know what you thought down below, as well as smashing that like button and subscribing if you're new.
I love happy endings, don't you? Carlos!